Hey everybody, it's Chainsaw. Today I'm starting the Protest the Hero discography with, of course, their first studio album that was released back in 2005 entitled Kezia. Anyways, before I continue on with this review, I do want to mention one quick thing. I do have the computer in front of me, so I do not screw up song titles and band member names when I get to them throughout this review. Anyways, let's continue on with Kezia. So interestingly enough, I did not discover Protest the Hero through this album. I discovered this album about 6 or 7 months after discovering Protest the Hero with their 2008 release, their second studio album. My friend was listening to one of the songs, and I didn't know what it was. He's like, hey, listen to this. So I started listening, and I was like, well, what's this band? Like, I haven't heard this band before, and I didn't know that it was Protest the Hero. And he's like, yeah, it's Protest the Hero. I'm like, really? And like, yeah, this is their first studio album. I'm like, oh, what's the song called? No Stars Over Bethlehem. And that is the opener of the album. And so I went home, listened to the song, and I found a few other tracks, and eventually, down the road, I discovered the rest of the album and listened to it in its entirety for a couple years now, and now I'm here to review it. So, interestingly enough, also, is that this album shows me one thing that keeps repeating in my head. This is the raw version of Protest the Hero, probably the rawest version we're going to see of this band, because this is their first studio album, and this is basically their first time at really paying attention to a lot of tracks. Before this, they've had a few EPs here and there, but this is the first time where they have 10 tracks. They have to focus a lot of their time on not just a few handful of tracks, but a whole load of 10 tracks. And I think they did an amazing job here. Now, if you look at this album, Kezia, comparing it to the rest of the albums that are coming up afterwards, the 2008 release, the 2011, and then eventually the new album coming out next month as I'm recording this video, is that the idea that the band had starting off with this first studio release, Kezia, the idea the band had for what the band's going to be. This is what the band is going to be. This is what we're going to do. This is what we're going to say. This is how we are going to be. That idea of what Protest the Hero is consistent throughout these releases. And the beginning of it, planting the seed, if you will, is with Kezia. The guitars, the vocal melodies, the solo work, the drums, the bass, everything started with this album, and it matured more each album. Some fans might disagree with that, but I believe that this is an amazing start for this band. And the reason this is one of my favorite bands of all time is because they've stayed consistent with what they've wanted to start with, which is this album, Kezia. Because some of the tracks on this album are just amazing. I catch myself singing to them constantly, and I just catch myself and I'm going, really? Like, I've only heard the song a few times maybe, throughout the years, and, I've spent time away, but I still remember the lyrical content. I still remember the little pulled back moments. I remember the aggressiveness of this album. I remember a lot of things because this band is so confident with this music. This material just feels like that they spent a lot of time to make sure that it was what they wanted. And also what was interesting about this album as well is that this is considered a concept album, which I really did not know that for the first few years that I really listened to it. I discovered that it was a concept album because it's broken up into 4 sections. Part 1, Prison Priest. Part 2, Prison Guard. Part 3, Kezia. And Part 4 is Finale. What's interesting is that the first 3 tracks are part of the Prison Priest. Tracks 4 through 6 is Prison Guard Part 2. And so there's kind of a change up there, I guess, that they wanted to turn this into different parts. Kind of like what Dream Theater does, except they do that in one track and they just separate it with all these sections. Part 3 with Kezia, tracks 7 through 9. And then the finale is just one track, the 10th track, A Plateful of Our Dead. Which I think that was interesting, but I kind of understood that when I finally discovered this was a kind of a concept and they kind of broke it up into 4 sections. Then I kind of went back to the album and really noticed that some of the musical changes through the different parts and just the way that the songs were put together and just the overall feel of these tracks when I discovered how they're placed throughout this album and how they're divided up. I will have to say, my personal favorite tracks throughout this album is, of course, No Stars Over Bethlehem. That intro, the opener, really just fade in really creepy, and then we get to hear the first few words of Rody, and then the band breaks out with this heavy aggressive riff, and then overlaying that heavy aggressive riff, they're adding on these melodies that really just kind of show you what the band's all about automatically. Aggressive vocal work along with heavy guitar crunching riffs, and then added on top of that we get these guitar melodies that fans love from Protest the Hero because they are known for their guitar work and their vocal work. I think they're best known for those two things. I'm not saying the rest of the band, the bass, drums, and everything else is not to the tip-top shape and not up there. But I think those are the main things that really stand out for me, the guitar work and the vocal work. And we automatically get that within the first few seconds of this opener of this first album. Heretics and Killers is a good track. I really enjoyed that. Bury the Hatchet, that was a really, really good track. I loved hearing the riffs in that. Blindfolds Aside, that's probably my favorite track on this album, I'd have to say. It's probably not the most technical and probably not the most in-your-face and probably not the most melodic type track, but that track, I just love watching the music video alongside it where they're playing with their blindfolds and eventually they take off the blindfolds throughout the track, throughout the video, but I love that track. It just really showed me a really cool side to Protest the Hero that we'll see later on. But that was definitely, I'd say, my favorite track. She Who Mars the Skin of Gods. That's a really interesting track. It's only 3 minutes and 51 seconds, but it really has a lot of stuff packed in. Turn Soonest to the Sea, 6 minutes and 21 seconds, the longest track on the album. There's a lot of things added in there really to make that track really stand out, and I understand why it's as long as it is, and of course some people might say, well, it's too long. Well, I enjoy it for what it is, so no complaints there. A Plateful of Our Dead, the finale. I think that was a good way to close the album. It kind of sums up the first 9 tracks we really got. It really got to basically conclude of what you just experienced. And really, this is the song to really not say, we'll see you later. It's more of a, we'll be back, okay? The continuation is coming because down the road we get this here, basically the mature version of this band, and we get to see the more maturity of these songs. But these 10 tracks really showcase that Protest the Hero at this time was confident and they're not scared to do whatever they want to do. And this album just impresses me every time I listen to it. Just to think that this is their first studio album release is very impressive. It's a great way to start off in a band. Let's go off to band members. Sorry ahead of time if I mispronounce one of the names. I'm pretty sure I will. Rody Walker on vocals. Like I said when he started off this album, throughout this album he is aggressive. We get to see kind of the raw version of Rody. Of course, we get to see him more mature. We get to see him do new things throughout the upcoming releases. But really, we get to see the main things that we love to hear from Rody. Amazing lyrical content, his very aggressive screams, his low growls throughout the album, and overall his singing, which really shows the range of this guy. And so I love his place on this album. His vocal work is very well done, and he's just an amazing vocalist, and I really can't wait to get to the next albums because he's really an amazing vocalist. And like I said, first great impression with this first release. Rody did great. So let's go to Tim and Luke on guitars. We'll talk about their guitars first. Luke has also done piano, but we'll talk about the guitars first. The guitars, like I said, is the other main highlight besides the vocals, and the guitar work is insane. It's not exactly the guitar tone and the production quality that we hear on later releases, but this is, like I said, kind of a raw introduction to this band because their first full-length release, and like I said, besides that, it's not really a negative thing, but the guitar work is just insane for at the timing of them putting this out, because later down the road we get to see the mature version of these guys and their guitar work, but we really get to see the confidence they have behind those instruments, because of course they could have taken it easy, probably played not so much aggressive and hectic riffs and these really outstanding melodies and solo work, but they really pushed themselves to deliver to people that have never heard the band or maybe have heard them on a few EPs and was wanting to see what can they do in 10 tracks in those guitars. They really showed what they're capable of doing, and they will later down the road. But Kezia, man, their guitar work's insane. I love the rhythm and the melodies and lead parts. Really an amazing thing to go back to and just listen to over and over. So the piano work is really good too. I would like to say that real quick. The piano, there were some piano bits throughout this album, so good stuff there. Moe on drums. Man, the drum work obviously could have been simplistic. This stuff on this album, there's some stuff that's not simplistic and it needed some hectic drumming. And I like that because obviously most of this album could have been played in a more simplistic way drum-wise, but Moe really came up to the plate and really went, okay, I hear that. okay, I'm gonna do this, and I'm gonna add some more things. I'm gonna do some more here. I'm gonna do some more there, and overall, I'm just gonna give some more to the drum work than just the very simplistic keeping beat in order for the song to progress through and do some changes. The drums really pushed and really added some things that really made this album even more exciting. So I have to give props to Moe for that. Here's the part where I might screw up. A name, Arif, Arif on bass. I'm sorry about that if I screwed it up. I'll hopefully, if I'm wrong, I'll fix it in the upcoming reviews of the band. But the bass work, I enjoyed it because I could hear the bass throughout the album, and the bass work does fall along with the guitars in some parts. In some parts, he's playing something a little bit different. But in order to keep up with these guitars and some of the riffs they're doing, it's pretty impressive. And overall, I enjoyed the bass sound and I enjoyed the work, so good job there. So overall, the band sounds amazing for their first full length, and I have to give props to them because they really showed what they're capable of and what they're going to be doing later on, which I keep referencing that, but trust me, it gets better than this if you're not 100% sure about, listening to every single thing from this band. But overall, amazing work from the band, and I love this album. I'm going to keep coming back to it, listening to it from time to time, and just enjoying the introduction to one of my personal favorite bands, Protest the Hero. So if I had to give a rating for this album, I'd give it a great 8.5 out of 10. Really amazing start, and it just shows what's to come from this band. So Kezia, 8.5. Great job. So anyways, guys, that's the review. If you liked the video, like the video. And if you like me and you want to see more, check out my channel or subscribe to see more. Thank you guys for watching. See ya.